Back in 2014, I paid over $200 for the cheapest 1080p monitor I could find. Specifically, this monitor, which I now use as a framing monitor when shooting B-roll. It has a TN panel, horrendous motion blur, and incredibly dull colors. And overall, it just wasn't very good. But it's what you could buy at the time. However, now, in 2021, the Acer SB220Q is a 1080p panel, features an IPS display, and has a 75Hz refresh rate out of the box. All for just over $90 Freedom dollars. Impressive on paper for sure, but how does it stack up in the real world?
Opening the box reveals the expectedly sparse contents inside. You get the panel itself, the base and stand, an external power supply, and a VGA cable. I understand the external power supply, but the inclusion of a VGA cable is simply frustrating. Unless you're a server administrator, it's unlikely your computer will even have a VGA port nowadays, and for most people, I reckon this cable will just end up as e-waste, which is unfortunate given how cheap HDMI cables are. To this monitor's credit, the stand is very easy to put together and toolless, and the panel simply clicks into place, no screws required. The downside is that it's the stand that you're stuck with. Having only a slight amount of tilt adjustment means almost everyone is going to have to dig out their old phone books or textbooks in order to place this monitor at an ergonomic height. This wouldn't be as big of an issue if a VESA mount was included, but no such mount exists. And speaking of the back, the 3-port I/O is essentially as bare bones as it gets while still being functional. On the bottom of the display are 6 buttons to frustratingly control the on-screen display, but luckily said on-screen display is surprisingly featured. There is a 6-axis color adjustment, as well as standard color and white balance adjustment, contrast, brightness, and sharpness. There is also a blue light filter, black boost, power settings, an on-screen refresh rate counter, various technical settings, and 3 baked-in cheater crosshairs for cheaters if you're a cheater. Finally, there are 3 programmable user profiles on top of the 6 profiles that the monitor ships with. Other than that, there isn't much more to say about the monitor physically. Its bezels are thin, with a reasonably sized chin. And the thinness is a win, but the gloss on the base is a sin. Its looks are generally professional, with no gamery accents to be found. But Acer is definitely targeting gamers with a 75Hz refresh rate, so let's see how the panel is. While advertised at 75Hz, I was able to overclock my model to 78Hz without any side effects, and I can't complain about extra frames. The monitor supports FreeSync variable refresh rate, and while it doesn't have the largest range, with 48Hz at the low end, it's still an appreciated addition. But the lack of DisplayPort means that if you have an NVIDIA GPU, you'll be completely out of luck, even with G-Sync compatible. Turning the panel on for the first time, I was greeted by a disgustingly green cast to the image that was wholly unpleasant to look at. So bad, in fact, I would consider it unusable even for productivity, let alone gaming and content consumption. So within an hour of getting the monitor, I promptly spent the time to manually adjust the colors using the built-in adjustments. And while I personally used a spider calibrator to check my manual settings, simply bringing up the same reference image on your phone and the monitor, and then tweaking the monitor from there, should be able to get 90% of the color issues fixed. I'll link my favorite website for reference images in the description, and the rest of my thoughts on the monitor will be in reference to the display after adjustment. Overall, I would describe the image on this monitor as passable, and something one could get used to. By far, the biggest thing it's lacking is brightness. In a normally lit room, I had an okay time playing competitive games, but for more sightseeing games, I would highly recommend dimming the lights. And even then, the image still felt a bit dim. I never had direct sunlight on it, and it would probably make it borderline unusable, but luckily the matte finish should help slightly with situations like that. Otherwise, I was generally unsurprised and unimpressed by this display. The colors were fine, but not particularly vibrant, and the viewing angles are a mixed bag. Great for color, right up to 180 degrees, but the monitor's brightness dips as soon as you move off axis. As far as pixel response times and smearing, I didn't have any issues. There are 3 overdrive modes, with off and extreme personally being unusable. Off being a smeary mess, and extreme leaving bright edges on nearly everything moving. Luckily, this monitor is shipped in the normal overdrive mode, which is also the best mode for basically everyone using this monitor. With that being said, I'm no pro gamer, however, if you are, you really shouldn't be considering this monitor anyways, and for 90% of people, response times will not be an issue. Finally, I know there'll be some amateur creatives out there wondering if this is a decent budget option for them. And while on paper, 96% of sRGB and 80% of P3 are passable specs, I cannot in good faith recommend this monitor for any kind of visual creation. And I would even caution against it as a second monitor lest you throw off your eyes. Instead, I'd say save up for a $200 Asus ProArt PA248QV, which is calibrated out of the box, is far brighter, bigger, has a VESA mount and a far better stand, all while still having that 75Hz refresh rate. More than anything, this monitor feels like it was made for the IT and server technician world. From its lightweight design, the inclusion of a VGA port and a VGA cable, the outward-facing ports, and the lack of adjustability to bring the price as low as possible. I actually did use this for server troubleshooting in setting up my first ever file server, and it was of great use, and perfect for the job, being quick to boot and always accepting a signal. This was basically the perfect troubleshooting monitor to sit on an IT cart and just work, for cheap. So, conclusion time. While I don't think anyone buying this monitor will be disappointed, and the technology certainly has improved on the very low end, I really think most people should be looking for something in the $150 to $200 range. These displays are bigger, can have higher refresh rates, higher resolutions, or be professionally color accurate. That being said, if you need a monitor that must be under $100, then this monitor will probably work for you. And if you're a server or IT department, then first off, why are you watching a tiny tech channel on YouTube? And second off, go buy 100 of them. This was made for you. As far as me, I certainly won't be using this monitor any further, but it has gotten me excited to see where budget monitor tech will be 5 years from now. I'll catch you all again next time. Thank you so much to my patrons on Patreon who help support the channel and give me money so that this channel isn't a complete monetary loss. If you'd like to support the channel, I have a link in the description where for $1 you can get behind the scenes and early access to new videos. For $3 you can vote on which products I should review as well as get your name in the description. And finally, if you donate a generous amount of $8, you can get your name on screen at the end of each video. I'd greatly appreciate if you checked it out, but otherwise I'll catch you all again next time.